Hey guys, welcome to Rihanna's Lens, where I interact with you about the components in the STEM field and introduce you to fascinating people who passionately inhabit the scientific and technical frontiers of our society. My name is Rihanna Malhotra, and I'm absolutely elated to share this podcast with all of you. On this episode, I'm joined by a guest who's a flight instructor. She began her exhilarating journey at 21 years old when she got her commercial license. She was also working in tech for a while. I'm so excited to welcome and introduce Alexandra. Thank you so much for coming on. I can't wait to begin our discussion.
Hi, thanks for being here.
So I want to get to know more about you and understand what exactly is it that motivated you to get into this field?
Well, I've wanted to be a pilot since I was 4 years old. Both my parents, they worked in the travel industry, and I just got to see aviation all the time. And at 4 years old, I decided that this is what I want to do with my life.
Yeah, wow, that sounds awesome. So you really pursued your dreams that you had since you were literally 4 years old, and at that young age, you decided that you wanted to be a pilot. And by looking at your parents around you, that's what really motivated you to get into the airline industry. So,
Absolutely, yes.
yeah. And what did your educational journey look like? So there must be some aspects in high school as well that must have pushed you to get into this field since you decided at 4 years old.
So in high school, the plan was always to be a pilot. So I chose subjects like physics and extensive math to aid with that. There wasn't too much guidance on what you should be focusing on as a high school student, but that was math and science was pretty much what everyone in the industry said that you should focus on. I was very lucky to join an actual aviation course at my high school. It was sort of a once in a year thing that they did for all of the high schools in the area, and it just happened to be that year that it was at my high school. So it really did work out that way. I got to do my first 15-minute flight in a Cessna, and that really just fueled the fire.
Wow, that sounds so cool. And then later, what did you proceed doing in university as well?
So I went to flight school in the States. So I moved from Finland to the US to study to become a pilot. That was 2013 to 2015 that I lived there. And after I came, it's not like university level education becoming a pilot, but in addition to having done the flight school, I've also done studies at university level in international relations for a bachelor, and now I'm also working on my master's in aviation science. So hopefully, I just started the master's this fall, and it's very interesting as per now.
Yeah, that's great. And at 21 years old, you became a commercial pilot. So how was that experience for you?
So I got my commercial pilot license at 21, but unfortunately, the industry, it ebbs and flows. So getting your first flying job is usually quite difficult. So it took me a couple of years before I actually got to work as a pilot. So that's what I'm doing right now, working as a flight instructor, and maybe at some point heading on to either airlines or other kinds of operations like air ambulance or the sort.
Oh, okay, I see. So, how was your first experience riding an airplane? Was it just a feeling of fulfillment?
Absolutely. Just pure happiness when sort of the tires lift up from the runway. It just feels like magic. There's no better place for me to be. It just feels like home.
Yeah, I mean, sure, it must be such an exhilarating experience for you, seeing everything from the bird's view. And I think everything, when you look from above, looks so beautiful. I'm sure it must have been a great experience for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, every flight feels like a first. It's um it's just it doesn't feel like work when you love what you do.
Yeah, totally. And as a flight instructor, what is your role and what concepts do you delve into?
So basically, what we do is we take students with absolutely no flying experience and teach them how to fly. So from their first flight hour, first takeoff, we take them, we mold them over 20 months into commercial pilots. We first take them through visual flying, so they fly by looking outside. Then we move on to flying on the instruments, so more looking inside the flight deck and not flying with normal references outside, which is of course what most commercial flights will also be done on. And we take them into the simulator. We have a 737 simulator that we fly with them. They get about 75 hours in there. And in addition to all of the flying, of course, we have theoretical studies. So the students have 13 subjects that they need to do exams for, and those are usually the biggest hurdle, especially if you're doing your licenses under the European EASA regulations. So of course the regulations are a bit different in different countries without delving too deep into that, but usually the theory is the hardest thing to get past. Flying itself is not difficult. It's After a certain point, it feels very natural to yeah. Most people don't, after you've been driving for a while, you don't really consider the driving that much anymore. So once you start to commit those that movement to your motor skills, it is rather easy to fly.
Right, right. So, after what set of qualities and what level can a student get their license to be a pilot?
Um, there's different levels. So you can be a private pilot, or you can be a commercial pilot. A private pilot usually will be flying on fine weather days just for fun. No, you're not doing it for work. A commercial pilot would then be also usually have education in instrument flying. So they would of course they can still fly for fun, but the goal usually in that situation is to fly for a living. So it's sort of a higher level, higher standard of what you of the type of flying you're going to be doing.
Oh, okay. So, now as technology is advancing, so has it helped pilots and students like learning more about aviation, and has it helped pilots while they are commercial pilots or private pilots while they are flying in the sky?
Absolutely. Technology, it plays a really big part in our day-to-day life. There's aircraft, of course, from different times. I've flown anything from planes that are over 50 years old to brand new, but and with varying levels of automation. But as pilots, we have to sort of learn how we as humans interact with these technologies. And that's really something that we during the training try to teach them. I teach a theory subject called Human Performance and Limitations, and that has a lot to do with how we as the pilots actually interact with all this technology that we have, and yeah, of course, what kind of physiological things flying puts on us.
So does that involve simulations, and how do you go about it? And also, how are simulations different from real life flying?
Simulators come in different sort of levels. You can have very basic simulators, which is just a screen and just a basic controller. What those are usually used for is to learn how to do procedures, not as much how to actually fly an aircraft. You learn to fly by flying. When it comes to more advanced kinds of simulators, for example, full motion simulators, as for example, airlines, when they train their pilots, they do their training in a full motion simulator, which means that the actual simulator moves in the same way as any other aircraft would. So that gives much more it gives much more realistic inputs from the aircraft. You can actually feel what it's doing, whereas most simulators that are used, for example, for training procedures are fixed base, which means that they're just in on the floor or on the ground, and they don't move in any way. But it's mainly the procedures, especially that we are trying to train the students on in our simulators during during their training.
So do the students test out the simulations first as a safer outlook and then proceed to flying?
Absolutely. It doesn't, they go pretty much hand in hand. So in order, of course, to cut some costs for the students, because flying in an aircraft is expensive, what we like to do is first have the student go through a specific type of lesson in the simulator, and then we take them out and do it in an aircraft. So it sort of goes hand in hand. Of course, this isn't how every single flight school does it. When I did my training, I didn't use a simulator at all. So we did everything in the aircraft, and that works for some. But of course, it comes with a bit of a higher price tag when you do everything in an aircraft rather than in a simulator.
Right, definitely. And as a flight instructor, what's the most rewarding aspect for you?
Oh, definitely seeing people or our students overcome things that they've struggled with. Seeing students reach goals and achieve things that they didn't at times think that they could. That's absolutely the most rewarding part of being a flight instructor.
Yeah, absolutely. Seeing a student achieve their goal and flying a plane out in the sky instead of just a simulation must be such a great experience for you that they have finally learned and gained from your experiences.
Absolutely.
And how has aviation been affected by the pandemic?
Aviation has been affected heavily by the pandemic. Of course, a whole lot of people have not been traveling. And that has, of course, led to a lot of people either being furloughed for shorter periods of time or actually losing their jobs. And with aviation, these kinds of ups and downs happen usually on a 10 to 20 year cycle. we've had it with 9/11. We've had it with the global financial crisis in 2007 to 2010. Usually travel is one of the first things to go when things aren't looking up. So it is an industry that is heavily affected by these changes, and by politics, by geopolitical factors. But it's usually also the people who are really passionate about flying who actually get into the industry. You don't tend to see pilots who don't have that love for flying. So it has been affected heavily by the pandemic. However, we're already seeing in the States that things are ramping up at an incredible pace. They are already getting to the point where they are seeing a pilot shortage, and the market is just there for pilots. And these things, they go up and down in this industry. That I'm not going to lie about that, but it is a passion for flying that sort of brings it all together.
Right. It's good that things are looking up now. And as a flight instructor, were there any hurdles you faced during the pandemic, or did students just continue coming to learn aviation?
Well, the thing is that when it comes to the amount of students we've had, of course, this does not apply to every school. But at the school I work at, we've had a good amount of students come in throughout the pandemic. We have, of course, been very open that there is a pandemic. We know how that affects the industry, but also the studies take 20 months. And the people who would be getting into this training during the pandemic, they would be graduating into a booming market. Of course, we can't guarantee that, but we're already seeing that, as I said, happening in the States. So there is also in Europe going to be a desperate need for pilots. And that's the people who've decided to undertake flight training, they're going to see the benefits of that. Because I would say that in maybe a year's time, the number of flights will be way past that of 2019 numbers. We're already at about, if I remember correctly, we're either at 71 or 81% of pre-COVID numbers for the amount of flights in Europe, and that's quite huge. Going from maybe 20% a year ago. So things are definitely looking up in the industry.
So do you think this increase in percentage is because of the pandemic that we had and the quarantine, and the longingness for traveling has increased? So is it because of that?
I think that there's a lot of people out there who have been very eager to get back to traveling, and it's just, I mean, it's not just private travel, it's also business travel, because yes, Zoom can go a very long way, but in the end, there's really no substitute for actually meeting people in person. And even if it's not going back to working 100% back at the office, but that kind of connection that you can't really get over a screen is something that the way to build those actual relationships is it's so much easier doing that in person.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, lastly, is there any advice that you would like to give to anyone that's wanting to join the same field as yours?
Absolutely. Go to an airfield, go to a flight school, ask for a test flight, just try it out. Don't put all of your eggs in the same basket. have it's always good to have different kind of education. It's always important to have backups in life. But if you truly love flying, go for it. It costs a lot of money to go through flight training. I'm not gonna lie about that, but in the end, it is absolutely worth it.
Yeah, that's some great advice. Well, that's it for today. Thank you so much, Alexandra, for coming on my podcast and letting me know more about your experiences and insights.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, and to let all of you know, this podcast is now available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, RadioPublic, Breaker, and PocketCast. Make sure you subscribe to all listening platforms and stay tuned for more. Alexandra, is there anything you'd like to say before we log off?
Happy landings, everyone.